Student, first of all, I will tell you about why we why to learn operating system. Basically, an operating system is a collection of software that manages computer hardware resources and provides common services for a computer program. So, uh, why we use and why to learn operating system first? The operating system is a vital component of the system software in a computer system, and basically this lecture will take you through a step by step approach while learning operating system concept. Okay, so the question arises here: why to learn operating system? Basically, an operating system is an as all of know about is an interface between a computer user and computer hardware. Evergreen line है ना. So an operating system is an interface between a computer user and computer hardware. So an operating system is a software which performs all the basic tasks, like you can say the management, like memory management, like your process management, handling input and output, and controlling peripheral devices such as disk drives and printers. So the some popular operating system include your first is your this one, Linux operating system. Okay, very popular operating system, Linux operating system. Second is your Windows operating system. Third is your VMS. Fourth is your like OS slash 400 and so on. So there are some important functions of an operating system, like memory management, device management, security, control over system performance, job accounting, error detecting aids, so many functions operating system. So that's why we use operating system. Okay, so next is your features of a Linux operating system. Wow, very important point. Features of Linux operating system. So there are a lot of features available. First is your portable. First is your first Linux feature is your portable. So portability means software can works on different types of hardware in same way. So Linux kernel and application programs supports their installation on any kind of hardware platform. Okay. So second is your shell. Shell is your second feature of a Linux operating system. Okay. In shell, you see Linux shell provides a special interpreter program which can be used to execute commands. When you write commands on your terminal, commands of the operating system, it can be used to do various types of operations like call application programs, run applications programs, etc. Third is your security. So Linux provides user security using authentication features like your password protection. So that's why nowadays Linux operating system is well secure operating system. So if we are talking about it provides security in three ways, namely authenticating, okay, by your assigning password and login ID, authorization by assigning permissions to read, write, and execute, and encryption also in your security. Encryption in security is very important. So your files convert into an unreadable format. So that's why nowadays Linux operating system is well secured operating system. Next feature, very important, open source feature, multi-user feature, multi-programming feature, hierarchical file system. What is open source? So Linux source code is freely available. If you want to download code of your operating system, sorry, code of a Linux operating system. If you want to download from Google, you can easily download it. And it is a community based development project. So multiple teams work in a collaboration to enhance the capability of Linux operating system, and it is a continuous. So basically this is these slides are all about your introduction first. So this is all about what is Linux, features of Linux, why we use operating system, what is Linux operating system, basic terminology of Linux operating system. So in this lecture we will discuss what is multi-user. This is the next feature of a Linux operating system. So what is multi-user? So Linux is a multi-user system, means multiple users can access system resources at a one time. Okay, at a one time many users can access system resources like memory, like your RAM, like your application programs at a same time. Okay, understand? So next is your multi-programming. So what is multi-programming? So Linux is a multi-programming system, means multiple applications can run at a same time. Hierarchical file system, very important. So Linux provides a standard file structure. Linux provides a standard file structure in which system files or user files are arranged. So basically in a Linux operating system, all the data in the form of hierarchical, like top to bottom and bottom to top. It's look like as a tree. That's why it's a feature of hierarchical file system of Linux operating system. So there are so many features if we are talking about like um, a live CD or USB. So almost all Linux distros provide a live CD or USB so that users can try it without installing it. Okay, like your application support. Here you see application support, like it has its own software repository from you can say where user can download and install many applications. So for example one student can download for example PUBG game. Okay, and he or she can easily download it through commands. Okay, so it has its own software repository from where user can download and install many applications. Okay, so if we are talking about file system also a feature of a Linux operating system. So in file system it provides so in your file system it provides like a hierarchical file system like in it provides a hierarchical file system in which your files are and directories are arranged, as I will tell you, like top to bottom and bottom to top. So these are all about your features in Linux operating system. Okay, very simple of features. Next is your difference between kernel mode versus user mode. As you all understand what is kernel and what is Unix, what is Linux, features of Linux. So what is kernel mode and user mode? So basically kernel mode, kernel component code execute in a special privileged mode called kernel mode with full access to all resources of the computer. So basically this code represents a single process. Okay, executes in a single address space and do not require any context switch, and hence is a very efficient and fast. Like the kernel is a computer program. You can say the kernel is a computer program at the core of the computer operating system. That's why sometimes it's called brain of the computer operating system. And you can say has a complete control over everything in the system. Okay. So in kernel mode, it is the portion of the operating system code. It is the portion of the operating system code that is always resident in memory and facilitates like interaction between hardware and software components. For example, one instructions can come from hardware and one instruction come from software. So all the controlling from kernel mode. So now what is user mode? So user mode is also a play a very important role in the Linux operating system. What is user mode? So support code which is not required to run in kernel mode is in a system library. User programs and other system programs works in user mode, which has no access, which has no access to system hardware and kernel code. Like for example, let us suppose in user mode, the user mode is a normal mode where the process has a limited access, while the kernel mode is the privileged mode. Okay, where the process has unrestricted access to system resources like hardware, memory, etc. So system calls are the only way through which a process can go into kernel mode from user mode. So basically in user mode, a processor in a computer running Windows has two different modules like user mode and kernel mode. The processor switches between the two modes depending on what type of code is running on the processor. Okay, so this is all about your kernel mode and user mode. If we are talking about advantages of Linux, so lot of advantages of Linux. So Linux is an open source operating system like Windows and Mac operating system. So it is not just limited to the operating system, but nowadays it is also used a platform to run desktop servers and embedded system like your watches. Okay. So Linux system is used to manage various services such as process scheduling, application scheduling, basic peripheral devices, file system, and more. Okay. So in this section, we will see some major advantages of Linux operating system. Further, we will see the advantages of Linux over other operating system, and we will determine why it is better than other operating system. Okay. So let's start. First advantage of Linux operating system, pen source. Second is your security. Third is your free. As what is pen source? As it is a open, this is not a pen source, this is open source, sorry. As it open source, it means code is freely available in internet. Okay, you can easily download it. Okay, so anyone having a programming knowledge, can customize the operating system. One can contribute, modifying, distribute, and enhance the code for any purpose. So if you want to modify your own operating system, so if you want to make your own operating system, you can easily download source code of Linux operating system from Google. Next is your security. Very secure. The Linux security feature is the main reason that is the most favorable option for developers. It is not completely safe, but it is less vulnerable than others. It means it is very secure from other operating system, too much secure. So each application needs to authorized by the admin user, means all the applications checks from admin user. The virus is not executed until the administrator provides the access password. So Linux system do not require any antivirus program. This is very important. It means no need to install any kind of powerful antivirus program in Linux. So it means Linux, it's a self secure. That's why nowadays Linux operating system is much popular rather than Windows operating system. Third is your free. Certainly the biggest advantage of the Linux operating system is that it is free to use. We can easily access it, download it and use it. And there is no need to buy the license for it. Okay. But in the Windows case, we have to purchase it. Okay. It is distributed under GNU program. What is GNU? I will tell you in the next lecture or next slide. And what is GPL, General Public License? Okay. So comparatively, we have to pay a huge amount of the for the license of the other operating system. Next is your lightweight, stability, performance, flexibility. So these are the some advantages of Linux operating system. Lightweight. Why it is called lightweight? Linux is a lightweight. The requirements for running, first of all, I will tell you about a Windows operating system. If you download or install Windows operating system, is a heavyweight operating system. Okay, but in the case of Linux operating system, Linux is a lightweight. The requirement of running Linux are much less than other operating systems. In Linux, the memory footprint and disk space are also lower, but in the case of Windows operating system is much higher. Generally, most of the Linux distribution required as little as 128 MB of RAM. Very less. If you when you download a Linux operating system in your PC, it requires only 128 MB of RAM. Very shocked. Okay. So second is your stability. So Linux is more stable than other operating system. That's why it's secure. Okay. So Linux does not require to reboot the system to maintain performance levels. But in the case of Windows operating system, it requires to reboot the system. It rarely hangs up or slow down. It has a big up times. So if we are talking about performance, so Linux system provides high performance over different networks. High performance. It is capable of handling a large number of users simultaneously. So it means users can work simultaneously, like 4 user, 8 user, 12 user, 14 user at the same time. Now I'm talking about flexibility. What is flexibility? So flexibility is nothing, but in Linux operating system it is very flexible. It can be used for desktop application. You can easily use your desktop application, Linux operating system. So embedded system and server applications too. So it also provide various restrictions option for specific computer. Okay. So we can install only necessary components for a system. Fine. So next is your software updates. So in Linux, the software updates are in user control. It means what it means software updates. We can select the required updates anytime or sometime. You can just update your software if you want to. So there are large number of system updates are available in your Linux operating system. So these updates are much faster than other operating system. So the system updates can install easily without facing any issues. Okay. But your command is correct. Otherwise, it will be installed properly and no error occurs. Now I'm talking about distribution distros. What is distribution and distros? So there are many Linux distributions available in the market. Okay. So many agencies modified the Linux operating system and makes the Linux distributions. So there are many Linux distribution available in the market. It provides a different flavor of the Linux operating system to the users. So we can choose um, any distributions according to our need. Some popular distros are Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, Linux Mint, Arch Linux. So these are your operating system, Linux operating system. My favorite operating system is Ubuntu 18.04. Okay. So how does Linux work? So for the beginners, Ubuntu and Linux Mint are considered useful, and for the proficient developer or proficient programmers, so Debian and Fedora would be a good choice. Fedora and Debian. These are the operating system names. Okay. So to get list of distribution, you can visit Linux distributions. Linux distributions. Type Linux distribution in Google. Okay. So what is live CD USB? So basically, almost all Linux distributions have a little USB options. So it allows us to try or run the Linux operating system without installing it. Okay. Next advantages. So how many advantages? Like only 20 advantages. So graphical user interface is your next advantage. Okay. So graphical user interface. So Linux is a command line based operating system, but it provides an interactive user interface like Windows. In your suitable for programmers, so it supports almost all of the most used programming languages such as C++, Java, Python, Ruby, and more. So further, it offers a vast uh, range of useful applications for development. Okay. Next is your community support. So Linux provides large community support. We can find support from various sources. There are many forms available on the web to assist users. For the developers from the various open source communities are ready to help us. Next is your privacy. Very important. Linux always take care of user privacy. It never disclose to anyone, as it never takes much private data from the user. Comparatively, other operating system ask for the user private data. So that's why Linux operating system is much safer from other operating system. Next is your networking, compatibility, installation, multiple desktop support. So Linux facilitates with powerful support for networking. Compatibility. Linux is a compatible with the large number of file formats, as it supports almost all the file formats. If we are talking about installation, so Linux installation process takes less time rather than other operating system such as Windows. Okay. So multiple desktop support means Linux system provides multiple desktop environment support for it enhanced used. Okay. The desktop environment option can be selected during installation. So next, second last is your multitasking. It is a multitasking operating system as it can run multiple tasks simultaneously without affecting the system speed. So this is another advantage of Linux. Heavily documented for beginners. So there are many command line options that provide documentation on commands, libraries, standard, such as manual pages and information pages. So Linux documentation projects, server for, and more. So to help the beginners, several communities are available such as Ask Ubuntu, Reddit, and Stack Overflow. This is very important. Uh, Linux operating system and Unix operating system difference. Very important. So you see on the comparison side and Linux and Unix, what is the definition? this is a simple difference between Linux and Unix. So what is the definition of Linux and Unix? So it is an open source operating system which is freely available to everyone. Unix, it is an operating system which can be only used by its copywriters. Okay. Examples, it has 4 distros like Ubuntu, Red Hat, and Fedora, and etc. But in the case of Unix, these examples are IBM X, HPUX, and Sun Solaris. Users, nowadays Linux is in great demand. Anyone can use Linux, whether a home user, developer, or a student. But in the case of Unix, it was developed mainly for servers, workstations, and mainframes. Okay. Usage. So Linux is used everywhere from servers, PC, smartphones, tablets to mainframes and supercomputers. Everywhere Linux is used. But in the case of Unix, it is used in a servers or workstation, not PCs only. Now I am talking about cost. So Linux is a freely distributed, downloaded, and distributed through magazines also. So in Unix copyright vendors decide different cost for their respective Unix operating system, like 12 $2 $3 like $5 So it's depend upon vendors. So if we are talking about manufacturers, Linux kernel is developed by the community of developers. So named was Linus Torvalds. Linus Torvald is the developer of Linux. So in Unix has 3 distributions: IBM X, HPUX, and Sun Solaris. So in the case of comparison, if we are talking comparison of GUI, so Linux is a command based, but some distros provide GUI based Linux. In GNOME and KDE are mostly used GUI. But in the case of Unix, initially it was command based operating system, but later common desktop environment was created. Most Unix distributions was GNOME. Okay. So interface, the Linux interface is a default interface is a bash, born again shell, but some distros have developed their own interface. Okay. It originally used born shell. Unix always use born shell, but is also compatible with other GUI also. Okay. So thank you so much. This is all about your introduction of Linux and various versions of Unix and Linux applications, features of Linux operating system. So thank you so much. Thank you.